The rain hammered against the windows of Black Hollow High School, casting long, fractured shadows across the empty hallways. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, buzzing like distant whispers in the dark. It was the start of another dreary semester, and for most students, it was just another year of monotonous classes and mindless gossip. But for one girl, it was something far more sinister. Lena Caldwell had always been different. She was quiet, reserved, and always wore a thick black eye patch over her right eye. Nobody knew why. She never spoke about it, and anyone who dared to ask was met with a chilling silence that sent shivers down their spine. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said she had a glass eye. Others whispered that she had been cursed. But the most disturbing rumor? That whoever looked into her uncovered, I would never be the same again. It wasn't until the arrival of a new student, Ethan Graves, that the mystery of Lena's eye became more than just a hushed conversation in the cafeteria. Ethan was the curious type, drawn to the strange and unexplained. Unlike the others, he wasn't afraid to ask questions, and something about Lena's presence intrigued him. Perhaps it was the way she always sat alone at lunch, her gaze fixed on something no one else could see. Or maybe it was the way the teachers subtly avoided calling on her in class, as if afraid to meet her eye. One rainy afternoon, Ethan found himself in the library, flipping through old yearbooks in search of any trace of Lena. But to his surprise, she wasn't in any of them. Not a single photo, not even a mention of her name. It was as if she had never existed before this year. Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan decided to approach her. "Hey, Lena," he said cautiously, sliding into the seat across from her in the cafeteria. She didn't look up, merely poking at the food on her tray with disinterest. "What happened to your eye?" he asked, trying to sound casual. A few students around them hushed their conversations, subtly shifting their attention to the exchange. Lena's grip on her fork tightened. For a moment, Ethan thought she wouldn't answer, but then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "You don't want to know." The way she said it, the sheer weight of those words, sent a chill down Ethan's spine. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, and he wasn't about to let it go. That night, he did something reckless. He waited outside the school until Lena left, following her from a distance. She walked with a strange, deliberate pace, as if she were hyper-aware of her surroundings. When she reached an old, abandoned house at the edge of town, Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. This was no ordinary girl. He watched from behind a tree as she entered the house, waiting until the door creaked shut before approaching. The house was dark, the windows boarded up, but through a small crack, he saw Lena standing before a mirror. Slowly, almost ceremoniously, she reached up and removed her eye patch. Ethan's breath hitched. He couldn't see her reflection clearly, but what he did see made his stomach twist. Her right eye, if it could even be called that, was a swirling void, a black abyss that seemed to pulse and shift like a living thing. The air around her shimmered, the walls of the house groaning, as if reacting to her presence. Then, as if sensing him, she turned. Her gaze locked onto his hiding spot. Ethan felt an unnatural pull, a force beyond comprehension. He stumbled back, his body trembling as a cold dread seeped into his bones. And then he ran. The next day at school, Lena acted as if nothing had happened. But when she passed Ethan in the hallway, she stopped for a brief moment, her voice low and firm. "You shouldn't have followed me." Ethan's world was unraveling. Strange things began happening. Shadows moving where there were none. Whispers creeping through the silence of his room at night. And worst of all, every time he closed his eyes, he saw her staring back at him. Something had changed. Something had seen him, and it wasn't going to let him go. Ethan had never been the type to scare easily. He prided himself on his skepticism, on his ability to rationalize even the strangest of events. But nothing could explain what he had seen the night before. The image of Lena's uncovered eye haunted him. It wasn't just an eye. It was something alive, something vast and endless, something that saw him in a way nothing ever had before. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, the darkness seemed to move around him, creeping into the corners of his vision, whispering things he couldn't understand. But it wasn't just his mind playing tricks on him. Something was wrong. When he arrived at school that morning, the halls felt different. The walls seemed darker, the lights dimmer. Conversations around him were hushed, like a low, murmuring hum that never quite faded. And then there was Lena. She sat in her usual spot at the farthest table in the cafeteria, head bowed, black eye patch securely in place. But today, she wasn't alone. A boy from their chemistry class, Michael Carter, stood beside her, laughing, his voice loud and mocking. "Come on, Caldwell," he sneered, grabbing the edge of her eye patch. "What's under there? You hiding a third eye or something?" Ethan froze. His stomach twisted in dread. "Don't." Lena didn't move, didn't react. But Ethan saw it. The subtle tremor in her hands, the way her fingers clenched around the edge of the lunch table. Michael smirked and yanked the patch. For a fraction of a second, everything was still. Then, Michael staggered back with a strangled gasp. The cafeteria fell silent. His body convulsed as he clutched his head, eyes wide and bloodshot. A strangled noise, something between a scream and a gurgle, escaped his throat. Then he collapsed. Chaos erupted. Students screamed. Teachers rushed forward. Someone called 911. Michael lay there, his body twitching violently. His eyes rolled so far back only the whites remained. His lips moved, soundless at first, but then Ethan heard it. A whisper that wasn't Michael's voice. Ethan couldn't move. His entire body was locked in cold, paralyzing terror. Lena stood up, slowly pulling the eye patch back into place. She didn't look at anyone, just turned and walked out of the cafeteria as if nothing had happened. Michael stopped moving. His body went limp. The paramedics arrived within minutes, pushing through the panicked crowd. They checked his pulse, his breathing, but nothing seemed to register. Then one of them leaned closer, listening to his mouth. He jerked back. He's still whispering. Ethan didn't wait to hear the rest. He pushed through the crowd and ran after Lena. The hallway was empty. The entire school had fallen into chaos after what happened, but Lena was nowhere to be found. Ethan searched every classroom, every corner. Where did she go? Then he heard it. A door creaking open. His eyes snapped to the old supply closet at the end of the hall. The door was ajar, darkness yawning inside. A sinking feeling settled in his gut. He stepped forward. Inside, the air was thick, heavy with an unnatural cold. The light flickered weakly overhead, and there she was. Lena stood in the center of the small room, her back to him. She didn't turn when he entered. "You should have stayed away," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan clenched his fists. What the hell was that? What did you do to Michael? She exhaled shakily. "I didn't do anything." Then what happened? His voice was harsher than he intended, but fear had a way of turning into anger. Lena was silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. "He looked." Ethan swallowed. "Looked at what?" She turned then, lifting her gaze to meet his. "You already know." The air in the room felt thinner, harder to breathe. Ethan's mind raced. "Michael," he's still whispering. "What did he see?" Lena's eyes darkened. "Not what? Who?" The light overhead flickered again. A deep, guttural sound echoed through the supply closet. A whisper. Ethan's blood ran cold. Something else was in the room with them. Something that had seen him, too. And it was waiting. He needed answers. Now, a suffocating silence filled the supply closet. The air was thick, pressing down on Ethan's lungs, making it hard to breathe. The flickering light cast erratic shadows across the walls, twisting and shifting like something alive. And then there was the whispering. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once, soft, insidious murmurs crawling into Ethan's ears, threading through his thoughts like vines. His heart pounded as he struggled to make out the words, but they weren't in any language he knew. The sound wasn't just being heard, it was felt, wrapping around his mind like unseen fingers. Lena stood still, her face pale, her hands clenched into fists. "You need to leave." Ethan shook his head, forcing himself to stay focused. "No, I need answers." His voice was steady, but his body betrayed him. His hands trembled at his sides. Lena's expression was unreadable. "It's too late for that." The whispering grew louder. The shadows thickened, pressing into the corners of the small room. And then, the door slammed shut. Ethan spun around, his pulse skyrocketing. The handle wouldn't budge. Panic surged through him as he turned back to Lena. What the hell is happening? His voice was nearly a shout. She hesitated, then spoke in a hushed, urgent tone. You saw my eye. That means it saw you too. A deep, crawling dread settled into Ethan's bones. What is it? Lena's gaze darkened. Something that should never be seen. The light above them flickered once, twice, then went out completely. Darkness swallowed the room, and in the pitch-black void, the whispering turned into something else. A breath. Slow. Close. Right next to his ear. Ethan's body locked up. He didn't dare move. Then a voice, deep, distorted, layered like a chorus of broken souls. I see you. A hand, ice-cold and skeletal, brushed against his arm. Ethan choked on a scream and stumbled backward, crashing into the wall. His breath came in ragged gasps as something moved in the darkness, something tall and wrong, shifting in ways no human ever could. Then, Lena's voice, sharp and commanding, close your eyes. Now, Ethan didn't think. He obeyed. The whispering became a roar, filling the room with an unnatural sound that vibrated through his skull. The air around him rippled, like reality itself was distorting. The temperature plummeted, and the smell of damp earth and decay filled his nose. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The light flickered back on. Ethan's eyes snapped open. The room was empty. No shadows. No whispers. No thing. Just him and Lena. She stood against the far wall, her hands shaking. Her eye patch was firmly in place, but something about her looked drained, like the life had been siphoned out of her. Ethan swallowed hard. What was that? Lena didn't answer right away. She took a shaky breath, steadying herself. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. It's watching now, she whispered, and it doesn't stop. A chill crawled down Ethan's spine. What does it want? Lena looked up at him, and for the first time, he saw fear in her eyes. It wants you. Ethan barely made it through the rest of the school day. Every second felt wrong, like the air itself was watching him. He tried to convince himself it was his imagination. Maybe it was all some elaborate prank. Maybe he was just losing it. But deep down, he knew better. That night, as he lay in bed, the fear lingered. The silence felt too heavy. The shadows in his room stretched too far. Then, just as his eyes began to droop, he heard it. A whisper. I see you. His blood turned to ice. Ethan bolted upright, his breath ragged. His room was dark, too dark. His bedside lamp, the glow from his laptop, all dead. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Inside his room, Ethan's heart pounded as he turned toward the sound. A figure stood at the foot of his bed. It was tall, its form shifting like smoke, its limbs too long. And though it had no face, he could feel it staring at him. Then it moved. Ethan opened his mouth to scream, but the darkness swallowed him whole. Darkness. Ethan's mind thrashed against the nothingness. It wasn't just the absence of light, it was deeper than that. A void, a suffocating emptiness that felt alive. He tried to move, but his body was frozen. A pressure, immense, crushing, held him down. He could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears, rapid and panicked. Then came the whispering. I see you. It slithered into his mind, curling around his thoughts, pressing into the cracks of his sanity. He wanted to scream, but his lips wouldn't move. Then fingers, cold, skeletal fingers brushed his face, trailing over his cheek, his forehead, the delicate skin beneath his eyes. The touch wasn't violent. It was worse. It was curious, like something examining him. Then a voice. Open them. Ethan's lungs seized. Every instinct in his body screamed no, but the pressure on his chest tightened. Open them. The voice wasn't loud, yet it filled the space like a roar. Ethan's eyelids trembled. His mind warred against itself. And then, just as he was about to give in, a hand yanked him back. A rush of air, the feeling of falling, the darkness shattering. And then, light. Ethan gasped, his lungs sucking in cold, real air. His body hit the floor hard, pain jolting through his limbs. He was in his bedroom. He could see again. He was alive. His hands scrambled against the hardwood, his chest heaving. His sheets were in a twisted mess behind him, the bedside lamp flickering erratically. And standing over him, Lena. Her face was pale, her eye patch slightly askew. Her breathing was heavy, strained. Ethan's voice came out as a rasp. What? What the hell just happened? Lena swallowed hard. It almost took you. Ethan's mind spun. What is it? She hesitated, then sat down beside him. She looked exhausted, and for the first time, she looked afraid. It's not something you can name, she murmured. Not something you can fight. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. Then what does it want? Lena met his gaze. It wants to be seen. Ethan sat in stunned silence. Lena sighed, running a hand through her hair. I should have stopped you from following me that night. The second you saw my eye, it knew you. It's been waiting for this. Ethan's throat tightened. Waiting for what? Lena exhaled slowly. For you to see it fully. His stomach twisted. Lena leaned back against the bed, staring at the ceiling. I was 6 the first time it found me. Ethan's breath hitched. What? Her voice was quiet. I had a normal eye once, just like you. But I saw it. And when you truly see it, it never leaves. A cold chill settled over Ethan. Lena continued, her voice hollow. It doesn't just watch. It feeds on fear, on sanity, on the pieces of you that unravel when you know it's there. Ethan swallowed hard. But your eye, how does that stop it? Lena's hand drifted up, fingers ghosting over the edge of her patch. I gave it something. Her voice was almost too soft to hear. A trade. I let it take part of me, in exchange for keeping the rest. Ethan's stomach churned. Lena looked at him then, her one visible eye dark with something unreadable. But you saw it without making a deal. The meaning hit Ethan like a freight train. He had seen it, without any protection. No deal, no trade, which meant, it's still coming from me, he whispered. Lena didn't answer. She didn't have to. Ethan didn't sleep. He couldn't. The shadows in his room were wrong. The silence was too heavy. And the whispering, it never really stopped. Even with his eyes shut tight, he could feel it, watching, waiting. Then, around 3 a.m., his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He hesitated before unlocking it. One message, a single line. It's closer now. Ethan's blood ran cold. His breath came in sharp gasps as he stared at the screen. Then, his bedroom door creaked open. Slowly, too slowly. Ethan turned his head toward the sound, heart hammering. The hallway beyond was pitch black. And then, a footstep. Something entered his room. Ethan's chest seized. His fingers dug into his sheets. The darkness in his room seemed to move. Then, a whisper, right beside his ear. I see you. Ethan couldn't breathe. His body was frozen, trapped between the crushing weight of fear and the unseen force lingering in the darkness of his room. The whisper echoed in his ear, its voice slithering through his mind like smoke. I see you. A presence loomed over him, unseen yet suffocating. His instincts screamed for him to run, to fight, to do something, but his limbs refused to move. Then, in the corner of his vision, a shape shifted in the darkness. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything. Just a void, a twisting, writhing nothingness that shouldn't exist. Ethan tried to scream, but no sound escaped his lips. The thing moved closer. The air in the room turned thick, heavy, pressing against his skin like invisible hands. Then suddenly, light. A blinding flash erupted through the room, shattering the suffocating dark. The presence recoiled with a guttural hiss, the shadows twisting away like smoke caught in a gale. Ethan gasped, his lungs burning as his body was released from its invisible hold. His bedroom door stood wide open, and in the doorway, Lena, her one visible eye glowed, burning with an unnatural light. She had saved him. Again, Lena stepped into the room, her presence forcing the lingering shadows to shrink away. She didn't speak at first, only staring at Ethan with an expression he couldn't quite place, pity. You're out of time, she finally said. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat dry. What was that? Lena exhaled, her fingers tightening at her sides. I told you before, it wants to be seen. She turned her gaze to the empty space where the thing had been. And now that it knows you can see it, it won't stop. Ethan's stomach twisted. Then how do I stop it? Lena hesitated. Then, slowly, she reached up and began to untie her eye patch. Ethan's heart pounded. He remembered the first time he had seen what lay beneath. The swirling abyss. The unnatural, shifting void that seemed to breathe. And yet, it had saved him. Lena's fingers trembled for just a moment before she pulled the patch away. And this time, Ethan looked. Really looked. Her. I was not an eye at all. It was an absence. A swirling mass of darkness, constantly shifting, constantly devouring the light around it. But deep within that void, something moved. Something watched. Ethan's breath hitched. Is that another one of them? Lena's voice was barely a whisper. No. Ethan's pulse thundered. Lena swallowed hard. It's the only thing that keeps them away. The realization crashed over him like a wave. I wasn't a monster. It was a barrier, a cage. The thing inside of it, whatever it was, kept the others at bay. A chilling thought entered Ethan's mind. What if his voice wavered? What if I did the same? Lena's expression darkened. You don't understand what you're asking. But Ethan did. He knew, because now that he had seen it, now that it had touched his mind, there was no other way. If he didn't stop it, it would keep coming. It would take him. And worse, it would spread. He met Lena's gaze. Show me how. The ritual was painful, excruciating. Ethan didn't scream. Not because he didn't want to, but because the pain was so absolute, so overwhelming that he couldn't. Lena knelt beside him, her hands pressed against his forehead, whispering words that weren't words at all. Something tore through him. His mind cracked, shattered, reassembled in ways it was never meant to. And then, darkness. Not the kind that stole the light, but the kind that replaced it. Ethan's world shifted, and when he opened his eyes, he could see, not like before, more. The things that lurked in the shadows, the things that whispered in the night. They were there. All of them. And now they saw him too. Lena sat back, breathless. Her hands trembled as she pulled a second black eye patch from her pocket. She handed it to him, her voice hoarse. Put on. Quickly. Ethan's hands shook as he tied the patch over his right eye. The moment it was in place, the world shifted back to normal. The things vanished. The whispers faded. The presence withdrew. But Ethan knew the truth. They weren't gone. They were just waiting, watching, hungry. The next morning, Ethan walked into Black Hollow High, his heart hammering in his chest. Whispers followed him through the halls. Did you see? He has one now too. What does it mean? He ignored them. He understood now. Lena sat alone at her usual table, her tray untouched. Ethan sat down across from her, adjusting the patch over his eye. For the first time since he met her, Lena smiled. A small, sad smile. A knowing one. Because now, Ethan knew the truth. There are things in the dark that should not be seen. And now, he was the one hiding his eyes. Forever. Ethan and Lena are the last defense against what lurks beyond sight. But how long can they hold back the darkness before it claims them entirely?